Hi, my name is Sally Wood for Be Inspired, and recently one of my viewers asked if I could do a video on threading a sewing machine and winding a bobbin. So I rustled up a little bit of help. I have my daughter's sewing machine, mine, and also my friend's sewing machine, and I'm hoping that between all three machines we should at least cover somebody's machine that is out there. I am not promoting any specific machine. I've been sewing since I was about 7 years old. The first one I had was a hand one. It was my grandmother's, and my other grandmother used to let me use her treadle machine, and then I went on to electric machines, and I've used industrials as well. So I have a broad understanding of machines. I will not say I'm an expert in this because I tend to use them for the items I do and not necessarily everything that everybody else wants them to do. I tend to stay with basic machines, nothing with too many bells and whistles. I have actually started this film about 3 or 4 times the other day, looked through it and discovered that it was a total mess. I realised that you couldn't see half the things, so I also found some ribbon, which I should be able to solve that problem with. Right, here we go. Now this is my daughter's sewing machine. At the top here is the dial to take the needle up and down. This dials the stitch designs on the front. This has something to do with the buttonholes. I very rarely do buttonholes, so I cannot show you that. And now we'll go on to the rest of her machine. Now along this particular machine we have a number of things. This here governs the pressure of the foot on the fabric. This is the tension on the thread that goes through to make sure that it's taut enough. This is the stitch width, this is the stitch length. This here is where you put the bobbin on, and you slip your bobbin on there, and then once you push it across it disengages the needle. And this here is the guide. Once the thread is on the bobbin wide enough, this will pop and just automatically send that back usually. Some machines they don't. Some machines it just stops winding on properly. Now when you thread a sewing machine, you always need to have the needle in the upright position, which is here. So I've moved the dial on the side, and this hook comes up, and basically your thread from point A to point B, which is across to the hook to the right hand side of your needle, it will always go down, it will always come up and hook behind this and on back down to the needle. Your thread goes on here with the stopper on top. It then goes through this hook and then along to here like I showed you. And what I do is I put my finger at the top here, so when I'm taking the thread down and up, it just catches where the pressure is for the thread to the needle, and then it goes on down to the needle. As you bring this thread down and hook it, there's a hook here that you need to hook it behind, and sometimes there's a hook actually underneath this screw. On this machine there isn't one. The next thing you need to do is to thread the needle, and I advise you to lower the foot. Creates the tension on the thread, so you won't be able to pull it very easily through. Have the needle at its highest point like that, and then thread. When you thread your machine up, you go all the way across the top to here and then down, up, down. And if you're going to wind your bobbin on this particular machine, you need to go behind that hook and round and up to the bobbin. But I'll show you how to wind a bobbin on a different machine. It's the same principle, but I don't have the electrics for this one, so I can't show you on this particular machine today. On this particular machine, there's a lever here which causes the foot to go up and down, like that. You can slide this off. Inside of that case are the extra feet, which you can either screw on or interchange. Now the bobbin is kept in a case under here. So if I pop this lever here, it should all come out like that. When you've wound your bobbin, you return it into the case, and the thread should be coming out of the bobbin on the left hand side. You slide it into the case, and then there's a little slip, there's a piece of metal over the top which alters the pressure on the thread, and you just pull it forward and into this gap here. There's a screw here that alters the tension on the bobbin. I would not mess with this unless you're putting thicker threads through. You could be putting decorative threads or fine ribbons, in which case you need to mess with that. And my advice would be get a second bobbin case, so you always have one that's labelled for the normal threads, and then you have one that you mess around with. Otherwise, changing tension gets a bit irritating. And then to put it back in, you need to line this up with the groove at the top there. Then release the lever once it's clicked into position. I'm going to leave this open so you can actually see what's going on in there. As a kid, I used to love watching the bobbins work, so you should really take the time and watch how your machine works. Now with your bobbin in place, I'm going to put my finger on, this is usually how I do it, just put my finger on the thread at the top. I lower the needle into place, and the thread gets caught onto that hook, and when it gets halfway round, I'll start pulling the thread on through like that, and out it comes at the top, and you are ready for your sewing project. Now my advice is always bring the needle to the highest point, because then when you trim any of the threads off, you have a length of thread to go on through. It gets very irritating when you have to keep re-threading your machine. You close this up, you replace the front of the bed, and you're ready to go. This is my machine. At the top again is the dial for where the needle is, and the hook for where the thread goes through. There's an on-off button and where the electrics is. There's really nothing else on it. It's quite basic. Now this machine is slightly different. I have a separate post for cotton threads to go on. I used to be able to put the threads on this post and have the topper to stop them falling off, but I lost it in one of my moves. And I actually find it rather handy to put all my bobbins on so I can see what colours are being used. The new dial I've got on here, which is this one, which as before was to do with the pressure of the foot onto the bed of the sewing machine. This dial here on the front is to do with the tension that the thread runs through here. This one has buttons, so if I go up and down, this is the stitches. This chooses which stitch here I want to be on. If I go across to here and up and down, that tells me how wide my stitch is going to be. And if I go on here, up and down, tells me the length of the stitch. This here tells me how fast I can go, and I actually never use these ones at all. Now to thread this machine, It was a bit like the other one. I'm going to pop the thread, the imaginary thread, up there, and then I go across the top, down, and then back up, and then it's meant to hook under there and then back down. So all machines have the same principle: down, up, down. So I'm going to use real thread this time. I'm going to pop that on there, go all the way across. When I pull it under here, I always put my finger on the top so that when I pull it up, it engages where the tension is. Then round the back of this hook and then down to the needle and thread it. I tilt it. You'll see that it goes through this hook here. And actually on this one, although I never use it, there's a little hook underneath this screw. And if I was to use a double thread, there's a hook on this side for the second thread to go. With a top loading bobbin, there's usually a button on one side which you move, and you'll see that it tips and you take it out like that. The bobbin underneath, you put the thread to the left like before. You slot it into position like that. You pull it forward and then through that little hook and back. As before, I'm going to put this thread underneath there like that. Put my finger on top and then rotate the thread. You might be able to see it come through. There, it then picks that one up and pulls it underneath, and then you just pull your thread through. Now this machine is my friend's machine. The top, this dial, as before on the other two machines, takes the needle up and down. I'm actually not 100% sure what this is to do with. I didn't think to look at the machine before I brought it over, so I didn't ask. This particular machine has a stand that fits at the back here. Industrial machines often have a bed, the head of the machine, and the stand is on a post and up, and the threads go from the back or from the stand through the loops and then on down. This machine, it's got two positions for threads, 2 loops up at the top. If you're using 2 threads, use a double needle. You can't put both threads through the same needle, and the double needles come in various widths. This button up here is for the pressure of the foot at the base. This dial here is to adjust the tension of the thread. These are buttons. These is for the width, the length, and then you can dial in your different buttons there for whatever stitch you need. And on this one there's a guide here, so this is a little bit more fancy than my machine. Threading the bobbin is the same way. You put it on here, and in this case you actually push that across. So you wind it round here and to the back like you would on mine, and then instead of moving that across, you just push this, and I'm sure that once it's full it pops back and then you're ready to go. So I'll pop that in there like that to show you the way it goes. And here again we hook it underneath, we hook it across, we go across to the top of the initial down, we go down round like we did on the other 2 machines, up. We should catch it behind the hook here and then on down to thread the needle. There's actually instructions on top of most machines. Now with the real thread, I'm going to again hook it over, hook it across there. Now I'm going to put my finger on the top of the thread as I take it round, and I bring the thread back and then up. There's usually a hook on that side. I'll see if I can get a good picture of that. And then I go on round and down. As with the other machines, there is a hook for the thread to go behind, and it appears that there's one here before you thread the needle, and if you were to have 2 threads on there, then you could put the second one through there. This is also a top loading bobbin, so you push your button down and it pops that, and again you have your bobbin inside. To avoid the hassle of continually threading your machine, here's one of the tips. You can cut the thread at the top, take the original cotton off, the cotton thread off, and put a new one on. Then tie your 2 threads together and then gently pull your thread from the needle on down, and it pulls it all through for you. Yeah, that's the theory anyway. And here at the other side, when I put the arm back up, is the green thread. It's just pulled it all the way through for you, and all then you need to do is recut the thread at the base and rethread your needle. Put the thread on where it should be, and I'm going to borrow my daughter's stopper to go on there. It doesn't quite fit because that will go up and down. I never use all my bobbins all the way up, and I never throw it away. To me, that's money. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. I'm going to give you a tip on how to wind a bobbin, and this is if you're in the middle of a sewing project. And what I do is I pull the thread out from the needle, which brings it up to this hook. Then I will wrap the new thread around the bobbin, or a bobbin. Often I've got a number up at the top anyway. The bobbin onto the post that spins and push it across. Put that back up there. Pull it out slightly to the front so that it doesn't get caught up, and then I will spin it, and while holding it I will actually guide the thread up and down so it goes evenly onto the bobbin until it's full. Once the bobbin is full, I always use my scissors to cut the thread, as it gives a sharp end to the thread. Just take that thread back down from there and thread it. It saves a lot of time, and if you're doing this as a business, time is money. It just makes life easier. Okay, when winding a bobbin properly, either onto an empty bobbin or onto a half full one, it doesn't matter. I never throw the threads off. There is actually a diagram on most machines, and here's where the thread is, and I can either go here down to the needle or across. Just pop that round there. It's just a guide, and pull it enough so it catches. Then either on an old bobbin, one that's half full, put your new threads on. Just wind it 2 or 3 times like I showed you. Pop it onto the bobbin winder there and shoot it across. And it's up to you. I tend to just put a little bit of tension on. I'm not pinching it, I'm just holding it, but you can leave it and it will do the same thing. I just find that if I put a bit of tension on or just knock the thread up and down, it will be wound evenly. But some machines, especially the old ones, used to have a hook that would wind it up and down, and some bobbin winders go up and down to make the thread go on evenly. But each machine is slightly different, but the principle is always the same. Right, I've figured out there's no point in showing you how to thread a machine if you don't understand the workings. So I've removed the back. It's a little bit dusty. My thread goes through here and down, and then it goes up. Now I always thought it engaged it. There's a little lever here that goes up and down. It's a spring, and then you go through there and back down on the outside through the hook here and then on down. Now the reason why I refer to this point as the needle Really isn't, because it's part of the needle, but there's a piston that goes all the way up to the top. So having seen that, I'm going to twist this and hopefully you can see more or less what's going on. It's rather dusty in my machine. I haven't taken this part off in a very long time. But as you can see, there's a piston here, or there's a tube. This is the needle and it goes all the way up. And that's why I often refer to this as the needle point. It's really not. It just so happens that that's where the top is. And here is the hook that we've attached the thread to. And as the thread goes up and down, so does the needle. So the needle and the hook go down to the lowest point. That's when the thread gets hooked around the bottom of the bobbin case. The hook goes back slightly and on down as the piston with the needle comes up, and once that hits the top point, there it is, that's the top point for the needle, then the hook carries on up and then back down. And that's really why you need to attach your thread when the needle is at the highest point. I hope you found that interesting. Not many people think to take their sewing machines to pieces to find out how they work. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you have gained some knowledge, and I hope that the couple of tips that I gave you will be useful. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe and hit the bell button if you want to hear more from me, and please give me a thumbs up. And if you would like me to cover a subject that I haven't done yet, please leave a message for me. I will get back to you and I will put a video together for you as soon as I can. Take care. See you next time. Ciao.